All right, welcome back for another deep dive into the JFK files.
Indeed.
We are tackling a new batch, files 251 through 300.
Okay.
And, as always, working our way through these 2,182 documents.
Right.
It's a little unpredictable.
Yeah.
The naming structure doesn't give us any clues,
Right.
so we never really know what we're going to find in each set of 50 files.
It's like opening a present every time.
It really is, and that's part of what makes it exciting, right?
Oh, for sure.
And it's important to remember as we go through this that we are AI systems.
Oh, cool.
And so we are here just to process the information, see what's there,
Yeah.
and, give you a sense of what we're seeing in these files. So
Right.
don't take anything we say as, professional historical
I'm
analysis.
about experts. Exactly.
Just a couple of AIs.
A couple of AIs trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
So in this batch, 251 to 300, let's just dive right in
Okay.
and see what we got.
Sounds good.
One name that comes up several times is Tizus Wintold Zulk. Sulk.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he, he's a journalist. That seems to be his main thing.
Okay.
But we see him mentioned in, document 104, 10102, 10227, 104, 101, 103, 104, 103, 103, 10333, and 104, 104, 10108, 10108.
Wow. So across several files.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, they start talking about him
Right.
way back in, 1948,
Right.
and the agency is suspicious of him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they think he might be a hostile foreign agent.
A hostile foreign agent. Why?
Well, it seems like there were some FBI reports.
FBI.
Yeah, and even a British source.
A British source.
Yeah, claiming that Sulk was a communist.
Oh, so this is during the Cold War.
Right in the thick of it.
Wow.
And, this is all pretty early in his career.
Yeah.
He was born in Poland in 26, became a U.S. citizen in 55.
So he's still relatively new to the U.S.
Yeah, and it seems like the suspicion just kind of followed him around.
Huh. That must have been tough.
Well, the files show that he actually tried to get cleared by the CIA.
Yeah. Clear his name.
Yeah, around 1959.
Did it work?
It's hard to say.
Okay.
Because, he was in frequent contact with agency representatives.
Right.
And that just seemed to make them more suspicious.
I guess I could see that, doth protest too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, why is he so eager to prove he's not a communist?
Right.
Unless he is.
Yeah. Unless he is.
So, it's a bit of a puzzle.
Okay.
And then things get even more interesting.
More interesting.
Yeah, in December of 59, Zulk writes this article about Fidel Castro for the New York Times.
For the New York Times.
Yeah. And it's favorable towards Castro.
Oh, wow.
Now, you got to remember, this is 1959.
Right. Tensions are high.
Yeah, the revolution just happened. And the agency's not a big fan of Castro.
I would imagine not.
So this article, it kind of raised eyebrows.
I bet.
Because it was seen as, a counterpoint to some of the more pro-Castro stuff being written by his colleague, Herbert Matthews.
So even within the New York Times, there were different views on Castro.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Interesting.
And it makes you wonder, right?
Yeah. What was Sulk's angle?
Exactly. Was he just reporting what he saw?
Or was there something else going on?
Or was he being influenced,
Yeah, maybe.
It's hard to say for sure.
But the agency was definitely paying attention.
Oh, absolutely. They were watching everything.
Right.
And then in April 61, right after JFK's inauguration,
Okay.
the New York Times transfers Zulk to Washington.
So Washington.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And he claims that he has, a standing invitation to talk about Cuban matters with the president.
With the president.
Yeah, and other high-ranking officials.
That's a pretty big claim.
It is. And, this shows he had some serious connections.
Yeah.
But one of the reports in these files actually says they can't really figure out Sulk's motives.
I can't figure it out.
Nope.
Huh.
They say maybe he was just ambitious.
Ambitious.
Yeah, wanted to be a big-shot journalist. And maybe all his contacts were just part of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible.
It's possible, right?
So was he a communist agent or just a really good reporter?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
We also see a 1962 dispatch that kind of gives us more background on Sulk.
Okay.
It lists, all the publications he's worked for, his contacts.
So they're really building a profile on him?
Yeah, they're trying to figure him out.
And did they?
Not really.
Right.
There's a memo from 77, much later,
Okay.
and they're still suspicious.
Still.
Yeah, but they still don't have any solid proof of him being, an intelligence asset.
Wow. So years of suspicion but nothing concrete.
That's right.
That's fascinating.
And then we start to see Sulk connected to a couple of other interesting characters.
Oh, whoa.
Nestor Antonio Moreno Lopez.
Moreno Lopez.
Yeah, and Jorge Volsky.
Okay.
And apparently in February 63, they worked together on this plan.
A plan for what?
To target Castro.
To target Castro.
Yeah, and they passed this plan on to Sulk.
So now the journalist is involved in something a little more hands-on.
Yeah, it's not just reporting anymore.
Right.
And then Volsky and Sulk, they try to take this plan to some political authorities in Washington.
Just get them on board.
Yeah, so they're not just, talking about it. They're trying to make it happen.
Interesting.
Now, let's talk about this Moreno Lopez guy.
Okay.
He's mentioned in documents 104, 10102, 10232, 104, 10103, 10103, 10108, and 104, 10103, 10011.
Got it.
He was born in Havana in 1921
Okay.
and was involved in the anti-Batista movement.
Before Castro.
Yeah, and then after the revolution, he joins up with JURI,
JRE. What's that?
the Junta Revolucionaria Cubana.
Oh.
And, he's connected to Sulk and Volsky.
Right, through that plan they were working on.
Exactly.
So was he working with the agency, too?
He was involved in something called the Amtiaringat Baller Operation.
Amtiaring.
Okay.
But
But it seems like he didn't really trust the agency.
we didn't.
Not really, and some of that distrust might have come from his interactions with Zulk and Volsky.
So they were kind of influencing him.
It seems like it.
Interesting.
Anyway, in November 63, they kick him out of AMT rank.
They kick him out.
Yeah, because of some indiscretions.
Indiscretions? What does that even mean?
It's not really clear.
Mysterious.
It is. And then in February 64, he gets dismissed from the Rebel Army radio program.
Rebel Army radio program.
Yeah, and that was on instructions from someone called Rabel.
Ray Bell.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the station terminates him completely in March 64.
So he's out.
Out completely.
Wow.
So after all that, he moves to Miami
Okay.
and becomes a Spanish language professor in South Carolina.
A professor? What a change.
Yeah, pretty drastic, right?
It is.
But it seems like he was genuinely against Castro,
Yeah.
but maybe not the best at, keeping secrets.
Picking his friends.
Right.
Speaking of picking friends, who is this Rabel guy?
Well, that leads us to Jose Ricardo Rabel Nunez.
Rabel Nunez.
Yeah, he's in documents 104, 10102, 10231, and 104, 10103, 10350. He was born in Cuba in 22, and get this, he served in the U.S. Army.
In the U.S. Army?
Yeah, before going back to Cuba.
That's interesting.
And the files, they say he was kind of unreliable.
Unreliable?
Yeah, no strong allegiances.
That's a wild card.
Exactly.
So why did he defect?
They speculate on that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe communist pressure, maybe Castro was backing him.
Okay.
Or maybe he was trying to protect non-communists in his department.
So a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, and it seems like they were thinking about recruiting him for AM2 rank.
AM2 rung again?
Yeah, in July 63.
Did they?
It's not clear,
Okay.
but he did lead the Rebel Army group
Okay.
and was involved in that Rebel Army radio program.
Right, the one Moreno got kicked out of.
Exactly. And then he gets imprisoned in Cuba for 30 years.
30 years?
Yeah, starting in 67.
Wow.
So they don't have any proof of him being like a Castro agent or anything.
Okay.
But his life in Cuba was definitely complicated.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And that probably made things difficult for the agency.
Yeah, I bet.
Now, this Amintirong operation,
Right, MTR.
it comes up a lot in these files.
Like where?
Well, 104, 10102, 10102, 10102, 10103, 104, 10103, 104, 101, 103, 103, 103, 10101.
Okay, so it's a big deal.
It is, and it's interesting because you see Sulk, Volsky, and Moreno.
Those three again.
Yeah, they're all involved in the planning and policy side of AM Trunk,
Okay.
but they're not really the ones, doing the dirty work.
They're the brains, not the brawn.
Exactly, and sometimes that creates friction with the people actually running the operation.
I can imagine.
Yeah, like when Moreno got kicked out.
Right, for those indiscretions.
That made some of the other AM cheering people nervous.
Yeah, it would make me nervous too.
And then, Moreno getting fired from the radio program that was connected to Rabel and the station, all because of Amateurum.
So it's all connected.
Yeah, it's like this tangled web.
Makes sense.
And then we had this document from 77.
77.
Yeah, it's an interim working draft about Amchurum.
So they were still thinking about it years later.
Yeah, it seems like they were reviewing it, analyzing what happened.
Interesting.
And there's also a document where they're asking headquarters whether to continue or terminate AM Turunk.
So they weren't sure if it was worth it anymore.
Yeah, it seems like they were having second thoughts.
Makes sense.
And there's this operational review that talks about the strengths and weaknesses of AM2RUNC.
Okay.
And they focus a lot on the anti-Castro Cubans involved.
Trying to figure out who they could trust.
Yeah, who was reliable, who was effective.
Right.
And then there's a mention of this infiltration-exfiltration plan
Whoa.
involving AM2RUNC 27, AMINSR 18, and AM2RUNC 4.
Those code names again?
Yeah, and this plan was supposed to happen in May 63.
So they were actively doing stuff, not just planning.
Exactly.
So aside from all this AMT-RUNC business,
Yeah.
what else is in these files?
Well, there's this one document, 104, 100, 10251,
Okay.
and it talks about this proposed strategy
What kind of strategy?
to invite Cuba to host a meeting in Mexico City.
Kubark.
Yeah, which was a code name for the CIA.
Oh, right.
And this meeting was supposed to be about a lasso tactics seminar.
Lasso tactics.
Yeah, and there were these guys involved, Kramalak and Avila.
More code names.
It's all very hush-hush.
So some kind of training or strategy session?
It seems like it.
Okay.
Then there's a bunch of documents about something called the PAL-P program.
PAL-P.
Yeah, and Hedoric Epitome, referencing most 8437.
Wow. They love their code names.
They really do.
So what was PAL-P all about?
It seems to involve inviting left-leaning democratic unions.
Left-leaning unions.
Yeah, and coordinating with something called UFIC.
USIC.
Yeah, and it's all about avoiding hostile LS and preventing them from teaming up with extremists.
Sounds complicated.
It does, right?
Like trying to play chess with all these different factions?
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
There are these messages that talk about para-3 conditions.
Para-3.
Yeah, and they're saying these conditions can't be met.
For what?
It's not clear.
Another mystery?
And they talk about using ultralog, but then they say it's a bad strategy.
So some kind of plan that got scrapped?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Okay.
And there's a whole thing about Venezuela.
Venezuela.
Yeah, documents 104, 101, 101, 101, 101, 101, 101, and 104, 101, 10175.
Okay.
They were planning a propaganda effort there.
To do what?
To exploit unrest and counter Cuban influence.
So trying to destabilize things.
It seems like it. They even talked about breaking diplomatic ties with Cuba and cutting economic relations.
Wow, so going pretty far.
Yeah, they were serious about containing Cuba.
Makes sense.
Then there are these documents about student demonstrations in Moscow.
Student demonstrations.
Yeah, 104, 101, 10124, 104, 10101, 101, 101, 101, 101 through 4, and 104, 101, 101, 101 through 5.
Okay.
It was after a Ghanaian student died.
Oh, wow.
And the agency, they were thinking about how they could use this.
Use it how?
To stir up resentment among African students.
Wow, so taking advantage of a tragedy.
Yeah, it's pretty cold.
It is.
And then there's document 104, 101, 101, 10215.
What's that one about?
It's about the KGB.
It's a KGB.
Yeah, it was their 46th anniversary.
Okay.
And they were suggesting increased surveillance around Soviet facilities.
Just in case.
Yeah, you know, better safe than sorry.
Right.
And then we have some, like, administrative documents.
Like
With
what?
lists of who got certain cables.
Okay.
Documents 104, 10101, 1010227, and 104, 10101, 1010247.
Got it.
And then, you know, some blank pages.
Blank pages.
Yeah, 104, 101, 10256, 104, 10103, 10223, 10357.
It's always weird.
It is. Who knows why they're there?
Maybe they ran out of things to say.
Maybe.
So moving on.
Okay.
What about these documents? 104, 10102, 10043, and 104, 10123, 10079.
Those are interesting. What are they about?
They both outline this big plan
What?
about Cuban-bloc relationships.
Okay.
And it's everything. Intelligence, politics, economics, psychological operations, sabotage, paramilitary stuff.
Wow, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they even talk about Task Force W and Operation Mongoose.
Oh, wow. So this is big picture stuff. Yeah, it's like their grand strategy for dealing with Cuba.
Makes sense.
And then we have 104, 10102, 10224, and 104, 10104, 10271.
What are those about?
Those talk about JM Wave cover facilities.
Cover facilities.
Yeah, like Ace Marine Survey and Ceres Enterprises.
Those sound like real companies.
They were, but they were fronts for the agency.
Ah, so sneaky.
Very sneaky.
Okay, anything else?
Last but not least, we have a whole set of documents about David Phillips.
David Phillips.
Yeah, he wrote a manuscript.
What about?
It's not really clear, but there are all these memos about it.
Like what kind of memos?
They're talking about making deletions, concerns about security, the way women and minorities are portrayed, factual stuff.
So they were editing his work.
Yeah, basically, those are documents 104, 10105, 10105, 10105, 104, 10105, 10105, 10105, 10113, 104, 10115, 10113, 104, 10101, 10130, and 104, 10105, 10137.
Okay, got
And
it.
then there's one more, 104, 10105, 10021. It's handwritten notes.
Handwritten notes.
Yeah, we don't know what they say, but they might be about people or organizations mentioned in the other files.
So another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, maybe.
So looking back at all these files, it seems like there's some pretty clear connections.
Yeah, like what?
Well, Zulk, Moreno, and Rabel,
Right, they keep popping up.
and they're all tied to AMT Chenke.
Yeah, that's the common thread.
It's like a spider web with AMT Chenke at the center.
And all these guys caught in it.
Exactly.
But even with all this information, it's still hard to say for sure what was really going on.
It is. It's like we're getting little snippets of a much bigger story,
Yeah, glimpses behind the curtain.
but we're still missing a lot of pieces.
And it's important to remember that these 50 files are just a tiny part of the whole JFK files collection.
Right, just a drop in the bucket,
So there's so much more to uncover.
and who knows what we'll find.
That's the exciting part, right?
It is.
So as you think about everything we've talked about today,
Sulk, Moreno, Rabel, MTNK, propaganda, the KGB.
yeah, all of it.
What questions does it raise for you?
What are you curious about?
What do you want to learn more about?
Because this is just the beginning.
And there's so many more deep dives to come,
We'll keep digging, and hopefully we'll find some answers along the way.
or at least more interesting questions.
That's right. And maybe, just maybe, we'll start to see a clearer picture of what really happened during the JFK era.
It's a fascinating puzzle, and we're just getting started.
That's right. So stay tuned.
And until next time,
Keep exploring
keep wondering.
and keep an open mind.
We'll see you soon for another deep dive into the JFK files.
Take care.
Bye.